This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. H. Rider Haggard, Ayesha, The Return of She. Chapter 4. The Avalanche. On the morning of the second day from that night, the sunrise found us already on our path across the desert. There, nearly a mile behind us, we could see the ruined statue of Buddha seated in front of the ancient monastery, and in that clear atmosphere could even distinguish the bent form of our friend, the old abbot Kou en, leaning against it until we were quite lost to sight. All the monks had wept when we parted from them, and Kou en even more bitterly than the rest, for he had learnt to love us. "I am grieved," he said, "much grieved, which indeed I should not be, for such emotion partakes of sin. Yet I find comfort, for I know well that although I must soon leave this present life, yet we shall meet again in many future incarnations, and after you have put away these follies, together tread the path to perfect peace. Now take with you my blessings and my prayers and be gone, forgetting not that should you live to return," and he shook his head doubtfully, "here you will be ever welcome." So we embraced him and went sorrowfully. It will be remembered that when the mysterious light fell upon us on the peak, I had my compass with me and was able roughly to take its bearings. For lack of any better guide we now followed these bearings, travelling almost due northeast, for in that direction had shone the fire. All day, in the most beautiful weather, we marched across the flower-strewn desert, seeing nothing except bunches of game and one or two herds of wild asses which had come down from the mountain to feed upon the new grass. As evening approached we shot an antelope and made our camp, for we had brought the yak and a tent with us, among some tamarisk scrub, of which the dry stems furnished us with fuel. Nor did we lack for water, since by scraping in the sand, soaked with melted snow, we found plenty of fair quality. So that night we supped in luxury upon tea and antelope meat, which indeed we were glad to have, as it spared our little store of dried provisions. The next morning we ascertained our position as well as we could, and estimated that we had crossed about a quarter of the desert, a guess which proved very accurate, for on the evening of the fourth day of our journey we reached the bottom slopes of the opposing mountains, without having experienced either accident or fatigue. As Leo said, things were going like clockwork, but I reminded him that a good start often meant a bad finish. Nor was I wrong, for now came our hardships. To begin with, the mountains proved to be exceeding high. It took us 2 days to climb their lower slopes. Also the heat of the sun had softened the snow, which made walking through it laborious, whilst, accustomed though we were to such conditions through long years of travelling, its continual glitter affected our eyes. The morning of the seventh day found us in the mouth of a defile which wound away into the heart of the mountains. As it seemed the only possible path, we followed it, and were much cheered to discover that here must once have run a road. Not that we could see any road indeed, for everything was buried in snow, but that one lay beneath our feet we were certain, since although we marched along the edge of precipice, our path, however steep, was always flat. Moreover, the rock upon one side of it had often been scarped by the hand of man. Of this there could be no doubt, for as the snow did not cling here, we saw the tool marks upon its bare surface. Also we came to several places where galleries had been built out from the mountain side by means of beams let into it, as is still a common practice in Tibet. These beams of course had long since rotted away, leaving a gulf between us and the continuation of the path. When we met with such gaps we were forced to go back and make a detour round or over some mountain, but although much delayed thereby, as it happened, we always managed to regain the road, if not without difficulty and danger. What tried us more, for here our skill and experience as mountaineers could not help us, was the cold at night, obliged as we were to camp in the severe frost at a great altitude, and to endure through the long hours of darkness, penetrating and icy winds, which soughed ceaselessly down the pass. At length on the 10th day we reached the end of the defile, and as night was falling, camped there in the most bitter cold. Those were miserable hours, for now we had no fuel with which to boil water, and must satisfy our thirst by eating frozen snow, while our eyes smarted so sorely that we could not sleep. And notwithstanding all our wraps and the warmth that we gathered from the yak in the little tent, the cold caused our teeth to chatter like castanets. The dawn came, and after it the sunrise. We crept from the tent, and leaving it standing a while, dragged our stiffened limbs 100 yards or so to a spot where the defile took a turn, in order that we might thaw in the rays of the sun, which at that hour could not reach us where we had camped. Leo was round it first, and I heard him utter an exclamation. In a few seconds I reached his side, and lo! before us lay our promised land. Far beneath us, 10,000 feet at least, for it must be remembered that we viewed it from the top of a mountain, it stretched away and away till its distances met the horizon. In character it was quite flat, an alluvial plain that probably in some primeval age had been the bottom of one of the vast lakes of which a number exist in Central Asia, most of them now in process of desiccation. One object only relieved this dreary flatness, a single snow clad and gigantic mountain, of which even at that distance, for it was very far from us, we could clearly see the outline. Indeed, we could see more, for from its rounded crest rose a great plume of smoke, showing that it was an active volcano, and on the hither lip of the crater an enormous pillar of rock, whereof the top was formed to the shape of a loop. Yes, there it stood before us, that symbol of our vision, which we had sought so many years, and at the sight of it our hearts beat fast and our breath came quickly. We noted at once that although we had not seen it during our passage of the mountains, since the peaks ahead and the rocky sides of the defile hid it from view, so great was its height that it overtopped the tallest of them. This made it clear to us how it came to be possible that the ray of light passing through the loop could fall upon the highest snows of that towering pinnacle which we had climbed upon the further side of the desert. Also now we were certain of the cause of that ray, for the smoke behind the loop explained this mystery. Doubtless at times when the volcano was awake, that smoke must be replaced by flame, emitting a light of fearful intensity, and this light it was that reached us, concentrated and directed by the loop. For the rest we thought that about 30 miles away we could make out a white roofed town set upon a mound situated among trees upon the banks of a wide river which flowed across the plain. Also it was evident that this country had a large population who cultivated the soil, for by the aid of a pair of field glasses, one of our few remaining and most cherished possessions, we could see the green of springing crops pierced by irrigation canals and the lines of trees that marked the limits of the fields. Yes, there before us stretched the promised land, and there rose the mystic mound, so that all we had to do was to march down the snow slopes and enter it where we would. Thus we thought in our folly, little guessing what lay before us, what terrors and weary suffering we must endure before we stood at length beneath the shadow of the symbol of life. Our fatigues forgotten, we returned to the tent, hastily swallowed some of our dried food, which we washed down with lumps of snow that gave us toothache and chilled us inside, but which thirst compelled us to eat, dragged the poor yak to its feet, loaded it up and started. All this while, so great was our haste